We run some of the biggest sites in the world. WhatsApp is still 100% on software. Fitbit in Australia, hotels combined, BigCommerce, including some great startups, Melbourne and Sydney, like Simply Wall Street and Tableau. Now this event has actually been streamed out live on YouTube in 360 degrees. So I want to thank the guys that are here from 360 degrees. They do fantastic stuff. If you want to find out a little bit more how to do this kind of webcast, then talk to the guys at 360. So thanks, boys. We want to thank our venue host tonight, Paul Chadwick. The partner, David Kenny, unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. He usually loves to come to these events, but he's doing another talk at a startup event in Sydney. But we just want to thank them. They have a program for startups. If you want to find out some of the both financial and legal services they do for startups, there's a brochure just out the front. So thank you very much to Paul Chadwick. Startup Muster. If you're a startup or just involved in the startup community, this is a nationwide survey run by Mon Wolf and Murray Herbst out of Fishburners. Mon's just been travelling the country drumming up support. She said she's had something like 16,000 responses to the survey already. So if you haven't filled it out, there's only 4 days to go. So please jump on, fill out the survey and do your bit, because the data we get from that helps us guide the ecosystem and the startup community in Australia. Now, we're lucky enough tonight to have Cheryl Mack here. Now Cheryl is the event director for StartCon, and Cheryl's just going to say a few words about the upcoming conference. And I'll fix the mic while we do it.
Just turn it down a little bit. Awesome, yeah, thanks so much, Brandon. Brandon's actually been one of our hugest supporters from the get-go. StartCon used to be Sid Start. It's been running for 6 years, sold out every year. We're actually the largest startup conference in Australia and possibly the Southern Hemisphere, although that's unconfirmed. Also a side note, that's CMAC for life. Just don't put a C in front if you want to tweet at me. But our conference is in November this year, and because it's the end of the month and I love you guys so much, if you come and grab my card or you give me yours, I will send you a discount tomorrow because we want to get some tickets in to make me look good for the end of the month. So yeah, we have some pretty amazing speakers this year. We bring in international speakers from all over the world. Some of the biggest things that we have this year are speakers from Uber, Andrew Chen, SurveyMonkey, Zillow, which is the largest real estate site in the US, Growth Hackers, BitTorrent, and many, many more. So yeah, grab your tickets now. Yeah. See you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Obviously, the guy that's coming out from Zillow, that would be worth seeing just by itself. So if you don't know Zillow, like a massive success story. Now, I just want to feature a couple of attendees. We do this every startup grind now. So Andrew Lockwood, where are you? You're tweeting out, are you? Oh, there you are. Hey, Andrew. So Andrew I've known for a very long time. He's a founder of a company called PostClick, which he ran for 12 years before he sold. He's a mentor at Muru-D, and he's the current Chief Commercial Officer at Add to One. So Andrew, good to have you here, mate.
Thank you.
David Gregory, where's David? So David is the founder of Excursion, and Excursion is an app that helps schools monitor and record accident events that happen at schools. So it's a lot of sort of legal compliance, but I think it's a really interesting startup, and great to have you here for your first time at Startup Grind.
Thank you.
Cool. And is Ilta here? Is he here? This one's interesting. This is Get Bliss. So Bliss is a marketplace for mobile massage. So I don't know, I might check it out when I get back to the hotel tonight and see what happens. But it's a marketplace. It's like Airbnb for massage therapists. So he was supposed to be here, he hasn't turned up yet. But anyway, he gets a free plug, so that's good. Now, our speaker next month is Jules Lund. Some of you might know Jules Lund from Getaway. He was one of the hosts of Getaway, and he was on Channel 9 TV for a long time. Jules has now founded his own startup, and it's called Tribe. Now there's a lot of people in this space, and the space is basically monetizing people that have social media influence. So if you've got more than 20,000 followers on Instagram or Twitter, then you can actually become a part of this platform and then monetize that following. Anyway, I think it's a really interesting story, but of all the people that are attacking this space, this guy's doing a great job at the moment. Facebook just highlighted them worldwide in the campaign that they did for Spotify. So that's next month on Wednesday, August 24th. Tickets on sale tomorrow morning. So if anyone wants to tweet out, we'd like people to tweet out. Our hashtag is StartupGrind or @StartupGrind A and Z. Also tonight we'll be taking some questions. Mick will be taking some questions, so you just go to slido.com and then you just enter in the hashtag SUGSID, and then you can just enter a question and it will appear on the screen at the end of tonight. So what I'd like you to do now is all stand up and give a very big welcome to our speaker. He's the founder of Muru-D, he's the founder of Pollenizer, and he's done some really, really interesting stuff. Please give it up for Mick Liubinskas.
Thanks. Hey, mate.
Yeah, cool.
I thought I'd have a Canadian Common Dry up here.
Well, mate, I did come to see you this afternoon. You were looking a little tired. You've had a pretty big week.
Yeah.
You've had, what, 2 demo days, plus you've had international guests out here, and pretty crazy week. And last night, the demo day, I saw something I'd never seen before, which was a song dedicated to you. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, that's good.
That was a big surprise. So very nice. All you have to do is work for 14 years in the industry and you get a song.
Get a song. A couple of years to go.
Time well spent. So.
Yeah, cool.
Worth more than the options I've got in a lot of companies.
Well, I'm sure you have a couple just to pay for the wall.
Yeah.
Now, look, just when I want to go back to the sort of start of your story. What was your first kind of interest in technology? How did you get involved?
So, is my mic on?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. So, I was really lucky enough to have really supportive parents. And that started back when I was 8 and they bought us a Commodore 64. They were very supportive, but also complete utter tight asses. So instead of my dad thought instead of buying one game, why not have unlimited games? So he bought us a book on programming, which is really nice. Sort of it's like just program your own games. How hard can it be? So about 80 million lines of code later, we had a very basic Q&A game that was boring as all hell. But then I realised actually I could sell that programming to other families and then buy as much games as I wanted to. So it was inadvertently got me to where I wanted to go. So that was really the start, computer games and a tight-ass set of parents. So both fragility and being frugal and innovation at the same time.
Funny enough, a lot of careers started with Commodore 64s.
Yeah.
So, I've still got a
young guys like you and me, huh?
That's it, yeah.
64K of memory is like you can get that anywhere.
I've got a working one in my office.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you have summer games on it? Or?
No,
I'll come over
international soccer.
International soccer?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think
Pokemon Go. Sorry.
So then, what was your sort of first sort of real job in tech? What did you do? Did you go to university or?
Yeah, I did. So I had lots of little jobs in tech. So basically, it did really happen. I built my own computer, and then I got like 18 orders for computers of parents in the street. And I was 16 years old, and I went and bought from a wholesaler all these computer parts. So I put in an order for 16. So no problems. I looked at the price. Like I'm going to double the cost. He's like, okay, give me the money up front. I'm like, what? He's like, you got to pay me. I'm like, oh no, I haven't got the money yet. He's like, as if I give a shit. So my first lesson of business. It does the payment terms, right? It's like, So I had to go back to all the parents and ask them for half the money. Then I built computers. So that was my first company really in terms of selling computers, installing coax cable networks. It was like 3 computers hooked up and a 1 printer and a 20 meg hard drive. It was just ridiculous. Like there was just a hard drive. That was the drive. It was this thing. It was incredible. 20 megabytes. People came in, like my friends, we all got the train into town to look at this 20 meg size hard drive. So I did that, and then I had so I went to uni and quit, and I got a job at IBM. So I was like, I'm going to work for this massive technology company. This is going to be so awesome. And I walked in, and they didn't give a shit about technology. It was like, yeah, there's this thing, it's called an AS400, it does this, and we're going to sell 100 of them. And it's like, what's it doing? What does it run on? How's it work? It's like, I don't know, just here's the specs, and here's the database, and market the crap out. It was like, I was working with uninspired people, and I was like, we're using this old technology. I was like, you own Lotus Notes, you own DB2. And they're like, go back in your box, you little graduate guy, go do that. So that didn't last for long. Interestingly enough, I resigned and went to work for a computer game company. And on my last day, there was like a meeting of the whole big team. I sort of know how corporates work with that, but a lot more people. And it was my boss's boss's boss and boss or something. So this guy stood up and he was like, blah, 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 and he was technology and innovation and vision. And I was like, holy shit, where's this guy being kept from me? He's awesome. And it was David Thodey, who ended up becoming the CEO of Telstra and hired me into my next corporate job, which was 18 years later. So history repeats itself. So I left IBM and went and worked for Virgin Interactive marketing computer games. which really never do marketing or work with something which is your hobby. It just completely screws it over. So.
Now, one of the more interesting jobs that you've had over the years was at Kazaa. So I don't know if anyone remembers Kazaa, but in the ashes of what was Napster and a ton of legal things, Kazaa sort of filled the void of peer-to-peer file sharing or illegal downloading perhaps. And then, funny enough, I don't know if you remember this, but the first time I actually ever met you, I was coming to Kazaa because I wanted to buy some really cheap traffic. So everyone was paying $10 per thousand for banner ads, and you'll sell them for $1 or 50 cents or something silly like that.
Yeah.
So the office was above, on the same level as Minsky's Piano Bar in the Cremorne Hotel, but there was no name on the door. So I had to go out and I pushed the door open and I said, "Is this the Kazaa office?" And they said, "Who's asking?" I was like, "I'm here to see Mick is Mick here?" Yeah. So yeah, I think I bought some cheap traffic up
Where
here.
were you working there?
I had shop free there. So I was just churning out the cheapest traffic I could.
Yeah.
So.
The week before, this guy came up in a suit, sweaty as all hell, trying to find us, and he had this stack of paper this big, and he's like, "Are you Kazaa?" I'm like, "No one's Kazaa, mate." It's like, "Are you Nicky Hemming?" I'm like, "I look like Nicky Hemming." He's like, "You've been served." And there's a stack of papers, and I was like, looked at the top of it, and it was like Disney, Warner, Universal, MGM. I was like, Viacom. I was like, we've just been sued by $1 trillion worth of companies. Not that we didn't expect that to not happen at some stage, but.
So how did that opportunity at Kazaa come up? How did you end up working in that company?
So
no one really knew much about it.
So in terms of to show my attention span here, left IBM after about 12 months. Went and worked for a computer game company. Left that to go and sell websites. Built a website. Someone said that's amazing. I built it into a platform called eCoast, which was I got $35,000 of funding for it, which I thought was the whole world. Ran that for 3 years, sold it for about, we made $800 more than we invested into it, so amazing return on investment. I went and worked for Steve Finale at Mass Media, selling websites and building web businesses, and then the lady I worked with at Virgin Interactive got hired as the CEO of Kazaa, and she asked me to come over and to help her do the marketing of it, and 2 hours into a meeting, she's like, can I pay you to come and work for us? So what happened was after Napster, Kazaa was built. So Napster actually drove innovation because everything was kept on a server. So to hide all the list of files, they made a distributed file point. So blockchain now, the origins of that actually came from Napster. It was basically coming from distributed content. These guys in the Netherlands made it. The guys who eventually went on to make Skype, they made the same distributed technology, made Kazaa. And to hide it away in the world, they thought, where will we hide this that no one's ever going to go? Let's put it in Australia. In Cremorne, this lady was hired. I was hired. Phil Moore from Pollenizer was CTO. I was head of marketing and business development globally. We had 3.5 million downloads a week, 50 million users. It was crazy, just the ridiculous growth. And the goal of Kazaa, our vision for it was to turn it into Spotify and Netflix. It was like we were getting a 99.99% efficiency on distribution of content. So one bit of content was distributed 10,000 times. So we thought we'd be able to distribute the whole content. We thought you could buy every record in the world for about $12 and still make a lot of money out of it. But we were, 8 years ahead of our time.
Yeah, wow. So after being served, was that kind of the end of Kazaa?
No, man, lawyers, they can fight for years on that sort of stuff. So we were served under Californian law. I was deposed in Sydney under Californian law, weird stuff like that with cameras and coaches and full depositions. Our offices were raided by forensic police. They convinced an 80-year-old judge that the files must be somewhere, right? So they looked for our office for the files. And actually, this is my favourite story, they raided our homes as well. They're like, maybe they kept all the discs at home. So they raided Phil Moore's house, which is way out in Hornsby Heights, and they didn't find anything, went under the house, and there was probably 3 or 4 cases of good red wine. And then there was these old towers, 286s, 486s or something, about 10 of them in a row that Phil Hoarder kept them. And this is on record, the guy in charge turns to his crew and goes, Bingo. You found the file. You dick. Like, bingo. Love it.
Cool. So after Kazaa, what did you do after that?
So it was incredible. It was like 20 hours a week for 2 years. One amazing lesson I learned from Kazaa was how to hire people that are up for a fight. So I was lucky enough to have parents who were like, when you go for a job interview, you're interviewing them, not the other way around. You should be saying, why should I come and work for you? I already sort of had that gumption in me, but I didn't realise what it was like to be on the other side and really force someone to come and work for you. But when you say, hey, yes, it's Kazaa, and we're being sued by $1 trillion worth of companies, and you've got a sort of longevity in this job of about 48 hours, you only get people who are up for a fight.
Cool.
So everyone on the team was up for a really big fight, but it just meant it was a really, really intense time. They decided at the end to just pursue it as a legal case, not as a business, and I resigned about 28 seconds after that. So I went to Africa and worked on a microfinance project in Tanzania, learned Swahili, Nzuri Sana, which was fantastic. And then while I was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, I had some ideas for some businesses and came back and launched one of them in San Francisco.
Okay. So what was that business?
That was called Zappa. So it was actually, we were trying to create basically Dropbox again, a couple of years ahead of its time. The technology wasn't quite there, but it was individual servers to be able to give one-on-one sharing. It still sucks to share files, right? Can't get a photo from my phone to my computer without forwarding back from the block. But this was back in 2006, and the goal was to create a secure network of file sharing. So that was good. You know, we did launch a demo, raised a bit of capital, got it going, but I learned a big lesson there in terms of balance of the big vision versus top focused execution, and we just didn't have the right balance. So it struggled on the technology front. It was just the bandwidth just wasn't there.
Yeah, cool. And was Pollenizer then Talk me about how the idea of Pollenizer came up. Because when I came across Pollenizer, I didn't know, even though I've been doing tech businesses for 10 years, I didn't know that this startup thing was a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a business, there was a methodology, and there was an accelerator program. I didn't know any of that, even though I had been sort of doing it the whole time. So how did the idea come up for Pollenizer, and how did you create it?
We did another business after Zappa, which was called Tangler, and I was co-founder of that. We took it to back to the US as well. That was a discussion technology, which was the case study of not being focused. It was just god awful, and it was anti-agile, anti-lean. So when they launched the product, they spent $1.5 million and 18 months. Didn't show anyone. It was still back in the days when stealth was the thing, right? And we didn't know any better. You know, all my years of experience still didn't know any better. And they we bloated the features so much that when we launched, there was a desktop notifier for Linux. So we had no users, right? So not even Windows users, which was the main platform at the time. Not even Mac users, which we also had a desktop notifier for. We had a desktop notifier in case we one day accidentally got a Linux user, which we never got, by the way. But it was incredible. Like, we just thought the bigger it is, the less you fail, right? And you know, I laugh and cry sometimes about those lessons learned. So we were doing that, and we moved the team to San Francisco. I stayed in Australia to operate as COO. Ended up dropping down to a couple of days a week while they were going through a growth phase. I'm going to stop doing my gestures. Is that there with you? I'm going to stop wiggling. And then so I just started helping other companies. So as you said, it was just like I started one day a week helping Threep, and then one day a week helping LingoPal, and Phil was working on LingoPal, and then I got him to work on Threep, got me to work on another company, and we're both just like, holy shit, there's a lot of tech companies here that need a bit of tech and a bit of marketing. Why don't we work together? He just literally sent me an email. It's like, hey, let's do something. And so we just wanted to create a model to help. So Y Combinator wasn't established then. There was maybe they're just doing that like their first cohort. So that there was this old incubator model of you get a building out at ATP and you shove people in it, you give cheap rent and hope that magic happens. But the whole assisted service-based incubator or accelerator model was really being developed. In the industry here, like, no one knew what ESOPs were, and they were basically taxed to hell anyway. And Atlassian had 12 employees, and it was things were really just getting started. E-commerce was still okay, but Facebook was still just for unis, and so It was really early days, and it was a lot to learn. And we didn't have any master plan. All the things you listed there would have been nice for me to think about before we started. But you know,
So this is sort of 2004, 2005?
this was 2000. Yeah, it was well after Facebook. So 2007. Yeah, so we're 8 years old now.
And so you just got together and decided you would just create this accelerator program, or?
Yeah, we started helping startups, and what our model was, we knew they didn't have much money, so it was like, pay us what you can pay us and give us 1% equity in like ESOP. And we just did that for about 30 companies, and the 1% added up to a portfolio, and then we used that portfolio to leverage into a bit of capital raising, and then we used that to start investing in businesses. So we did Spreets, which worked really well. Other companies like Oomph and Ozweather and other Linkia. We were the first guys who worked on Posse with Rebecca Campbell. Nikki Durkin and 99 Dresses, worked with her. So we worked with more than 50 companies over about a 5-year period.
Cool. Now, at one stage, Pollenizer kind of pivoted itself, where it started running programs for corporates. Now, and that's, you've seen a lot of other programs do that as well. Now, was that because you thought, oh, this is really a hard way to make money? Or was it that there was just a real strong demand from the corporates to learn about innovation and startups?
Yeah, we actually did that right from the start. They paid significantly better than startups did, like 10x, and you could do a little bit of that, and what they wanted was just the concepts that you were learning. So we thought that balance was quite good, and one of the big mistakes I think we made was, and I take full responsibility for it, was I wanted to just double down on building the startups. But what we lost in terms of the cash flow really hurt us over time, just because it takes, whilst we have Spreets, which was 0 to 37 million in 13 months, you also have Woo-Boards, which are take 5 years, and Oomph, which is 8 years, and probably 8 years to go, and we got fooled by our own success of one company to think that, hey, we could cycle these through pretty quickly. But yeah, we drank far too much Kool-Aid in that one. So, but Pollenizer now has gone back to a balanced approach, which is working on a portfolio company, basically one new one every year, and the rest of it is corporate work actually. So.
Yeah, let's just talk a little bit about Spreets, which is obviously a great success story. I've heard people say, oh, those guys were so lucky, the timing, they had no idea, they just kind of rolled into it. Like, tell us a little bit how Spreets started and how it got such an amazing result in such a short time.
Yeah, someone wrote, you just got lucky as a comment, anonymous comment on our blog post at the end of the day, and I was just like, I didn't publish it, I edited it slightly, but my first comment was, fuck you. Here's a list of 12 things we did to be lucky, and what were you doing? Why weren't you lucky? Am I ridiculously smarter than you, or what? So, the luck was like, so Dean McAvoy, I've known a guy for 10 years, and we supported him through Booking Angel, which failed, and we backed him again. How about that for a bit of luck? Chris Hitchin, 5 years ago, we started working with, was the guy who introduced us to the investor in Switzerland. There's some luck. We built a team that was available and ready to go straight away, trained them up, and to do both technology and marketing. Hey, there's about 6 months of preparation luck right there. We launched the product within 30 days and made $10,000 in the first 24 hours. That was just a bit of blind luck there sitting there. I was just like, I was furious. The dishonour and disrespect for the people who did like 24-hour work constantly on this product, like just worked so hard. If no one knows who that anonymous person was, I'm still pissed off to this day.
Like, one of the things you mentioned there was actually the scaling up of the sales force, right?
So I think this is being streamed.
It's only live.
You raised a good guy.
Like you mentioned,
people sang songs about me last night. Nice guy.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the scaling up the sales force, right? So anyone can have an idea, anyone can build a website pretty quickly. But scaling up that sales force, a lot of startups struggle with.
Yeah.
How are Spreets able to do that so quickly, and what did you learn from that to pass on to startups that need to do the same thing?
Yeah, I mean there was stuff we hoped Spreets would be in terms of that whole model, and I'm sure Groupon feels exactly the same way. Although I'm quite happy right now Yahoo bought us when they did. Absolutely. One thing to know is even if you completely and utterly copy an existing business model that works, it is still really, really hard. Like, so we had Damien Andreessen, who now runs LawPath, one of the Pollenizer businesses, at driving the sales team, and he was like, he had to learn about how to sell it and how to structure and write contracts and follow through and manage that, and then just teach other people to do that. And they got to, we had this really big philosophy of A/B testing. In fact, A, B, C, D, E, F, G testing was like, we would always be experimenting just over and over again. We found actually the best way to hire sales teams was to do multiple people at once. So we'd get 5 people in a room around a table and with a phone in the middle, be like, here's a list of contacts, who wants to make the first call? Here's the product, we'd give 5 minutes of briefing, who wants to make the first call? And it was actually the second and third, the first person who made the call had too much bravado, and it never worked out. It'd just be like, I can do it! And then no, they couldn't do it. The second and third person were brave enough, but they were smart enough to listen and learn a bit. So they hired them. We were testing, 5 or 6 different subject headlines every single email, every single day. The power of the subject headline was everything. And what we realised, it was 7 different levers of the Spreed's business that had to be exactly right and adjusted daily and monitored like a completely living thing for it even to survive. So when, again, people saying lucky on the outside, you're like, you have no idea what that luck feels like, man. So yeah, that was really, really hard. And then scaling the sales team, incentivising that right way, having a culture, finding how that works, having enough personality and follow up. They're hard things, but they're always an extension of the core co-founders. It'll never vary dramatically from that, I think, ever in good companies. So picking that first co-founding team is critical.
Yeah, cool. Now, I remember when I read that you were going over to Muru-D, Telstra was doing this, back this new accelerator program. I was sort of quite surprised, or you were so entwined as Pollenizer that to see you somewhere else was a little bit different. Tell me how that came about and just the genesis of Muru-D and its kind of values.
Yeah, so 5 years in a Pollenizer, my longest job ever. Although I was working with different company every 3 months, changing constantly, so it still satisfied my ADHD requirements. But even then, 5 years was a very long time for me. So in terms of the business, it was just right the field took it forward, and I wanted to find a new adventure. I was also a big believer in what the accelerator model could do. I also went to Israel and saw their ecosystem there. And one of the things I saw is we went in these really big companies like RSA and IBM and Google. They had these huge corporate companies, and then they'd always have some part of it which was just super startup, super cool. It was like a garage or a cafeteria which was just co-working and looked like a University Avenue cafe, Cuba cafe. So I was like, why doesn't Australia have this? And I realised Australia, has this tiny population, and all of the companies are either the local companies are banks, telco, or mining companies, and everyone else is a branch office who doesn't care about global opportunities. So what we end up having is these companies which are just domestically focused. And I was like, how can we actually fix this? So I came back and was offered the job at Muru-D, and it was like, well, cursed by what you asked for. It's like either set this up to run it properly, or shut up and get out of the way. So I thought it was an opportunity that because I knew the guys from Optus Seed were great guys, but they really, really struggled because of how it had been engineered in the first place. And I wanted to try to create at least one corporate who was doing it well. When a lot of corporates just sort of poke their nose into startups and say they're interested and realise there's not $1 million lying around every corner without a whole lot of hard work. And I thought if I can help Telstra do something that's genuine and authentic, that would be a good legacy to leave for the industry.
Cool. So you just finished batch 3 at
Yeah.
Muru-D. So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
It's a lot of teams and a lot of people, a lot of jobs.
Yep.
What are your learnings through just seeing so many teams come through? Because even last night's batch, it was quite clear that there was quite a variety of teams there. There was one team was launching rockets into space, someone's delivering goodie boxes for kids. There was quite a variety. Yeah. So what have you learned, and what have you learned as far as mentoring these startups and what they need?
Yeah, I think a lot. Australia still struggles with selling globally. We're just a tiny population, so it's what my big mantra I've been preaching is build local, sell global. Don't even care about the Australian market. You can get locked in here, and we'll never be the global leader staying in Australia. I think it's very, very difficult to do that. So that's one of the big things. The other one in terms of the commitment to do it. I think too many people are getting caught by the startup bug and coming up with the first idea they think about for an app, and that they don't particularly care about it. They think no one else is doing it, so that's why I'll do it. And so they'll do it, and then they get started, and it's easy. Like the first 6 months, of the honeymoon period, you're like, you know, it's all great, feels good, you've got a website up, you've got 800 people download your app, and then it gets hard, and there's not much money, you're looking at what you used to want to earn at a corporate, and you're like, I'm going to go back. It's because you're not doing something they care about. Like 8.3 years is the average time it takes an entrepreneur to get $1 back in return over and above what they're putting into it. 8.3 years. So if you don't have 8.3 years of commitment and energy, you know, probably don't start.
What's the number one reason you see them fail? You know, is it team, is it money, is it market?
Lots of reasons. So the team, like, it's a hard thing to learn. You have to do a lot of things simultaneously, a lot of things that are contradictory, right? You can't just be completely focused. You've got to have vision as well. You can't just focus on the vision, otherwise you don't get anything done. So you've got some contradictions to deal with. But you've got to build a product, get happy customers, build a team, finance it, do that relentlessly with endless rejection, and stay positive. Learn about your own IP of the business. Like 99% of the IP of your business is learned by doing. So it's ahead of you. You can't think it through. You've just got to do it. So the combination is actually the hardest thing, which is why you need the energy, right? It's just like you fire yourself a couple times a day, and you've got to rehire yourself, and you've got to say why. And it's like, it's not because one day I'm going to make lots and lots of money, because chances are you're not. So if you don't, you know, it's a really simple thing I say to people. It's like, well, they're like, yeah, I really want to get into Muru-D and do this program. No, bro, I'll buy the business right now for $2 million, but you've got to run it for 10 years. I'll give you a financial outcome. I don't know. Like, it's like, well, which one do you care about most? So, the team stuff is really, really hard. I was saying to someone before, co-founding teams, the foundation is really, really important. But it's a relationship with lots of pressure, lots of stress, hard work, and normally no sex. So it's a tough marriage. So Phil called me his other wife. There was no sex there, but a lot of stress. Exactly, yeah. So that's hard. I think one of the other things is we drown in opportunities because there's no one telling us what we should focus on and prioritise. It's easy to do way too much. I was half supporting, half teasing someone who would ask me a question about their business, and I was trying to drill down into what their focus was. It was a wellness and wellbeing business, and I was like, who's it focus on? Diabetics, old or young? Everybody. Okay, no, it's not going to be for everybody. Old or young? Middle age? Pick an age. Male or female? Both. No, pick one. Female. Okay. And so getting down to most businesses fail not because they don't get to 1 million happy customers, they don't even get to one happy customer. And that's the first thing, is just to go and get one ridiculously committed, amazingly happy, satisfied customer. Job well done. You've just put yourself in the top 5% of startups. Then go get two. Then go get three.
How do you define a happy customer? Someone that just bought something and then, oh, that was okay, that was fine, I'm happy with the purchase. Yeah.
So I think knowing what that is one of your key things, right? And it's always something which means it's not just an early indicator. So like, remember the old days hits on your website? How many hits have you got? When you've got 48 images on your homepage. So, and then it was registrations. I have 88,000 people registered. It's got to be something which means, objectively means that they value the product. So people rarely, stupidly enough, buy a product twice, right? It's like, if you use it the first time and don't like it, you won't buy again. If they buy it a second time, or if they use it 3 days in a row, then there's some objective meaning that they value that. I guarantee there are 10 products launched on TechCrunch today that will make all our lives slightly better. And no one here will adopt any of those into your lives. They will guarantee on paper, and if you adopted them, will make your life slightly better. But you won't use them because no one's got time for slightly better. What you want is a small group of people who want it so bad they'll walk across broken glass to get it and make them happy and then go get the rest. Because if they don't want it, sure as hell the other people aren't going to want it either. So that discipline to focus on it. I'm terrible at it, which is why I have to have lots of tools and good people around me. I get distracted by the shiny object and going for the big picture, but I could be like, head down and focus.
Yeah, cool. Now, a lot of Australia's tech success stories were bootstrapped. This is probably 5 and more years ago.
Yeah.
Atlassian was bootstrapped until anyone had heard of it.
Yeah.
Invado, 99 Designs,
Yep.
it goes on and
BigCommerce,
on. BigCommerce, yeah, all bootstrapped.
Yeah.
Can a company bootstrap today, or is the market too competitive where they need to raise capital to get ahead of the race? And how does a startup make that decision? Because raising capital takes a lot of time and effort and may not even end up in results. So how do they make that decision?
Yeah, I think it is a big advantage of Australian businesses, but if we can combine both the global selling and that bootstrapping, that's when we win. We do really, really well, and we just outlast everyone else. Because in the valley, you could have the same idea and go raise 5 mil, but if you've got the 5 mil, then they're not saying, hey, take this 5 mil and hey, take your time. Whenever you want to get returns and grow, that's okay with us. It's like, there's a party of the 5 mil, it's in the bank, and like 8:59 the next morning, it's like, how's the results going? You're growing? When's the next round? You're like, they are riding your ass. That's their professional job, is to ride your ass until they get a return. And they don't want a 2 or 3x, right? They're like, I've seen companies like get $5 million investment, and 6 months later someone was offering them 4x, and the VCs are like, 4x? I'm not talking about the beer, I'm talking 4 times multiple of it. They'll actually turn it down, the company went to 0. It's like, no, we're going to swing for a 20. Like, what's the point? We didn't put in 5 million, go through all that DD just to give you a 4x. Get out of here. So it's a big advantage for Australians. It's like, pay for your salary, get to unlimited runway, pay for your team. Mike and Scott were like, they left their graduate jobs at PwC, what Scott did. It's like, if I can just get 45k revenue, that was his goal. It was like selling a product for $1,000 a year. That's 90 customers, it covers us, right? And then they were like, oh, now we don't have to do any more. We can keep growing. So if we can combine that, that's really, really good. There are businesses which are capital intensive, like hardware and research based, which we can struggle with in terms of that capital. But if we combine both fast speed of learning and patience, and there's another contradiction for you, impatience for action, but patience for results. So you've got to work your ass off and just keep doing stuff, but you can't expect it all to work. Scott refers to it as constant testing, which isn't fatal. That's right. It's just constant small tests. You want to make all the mistakes you need to make before you run out of resources, which is time or money and passion, dedication, or in my case, my wife not getting me out of bed, telling me to go get a real job. So,
Invado was a great example of that. I mean, they just kept trying everything. And some of it was crazy and it didn't work, and then some it didn't work, and then they thought it didn't, but then it did later, and all that kind of stuff. So just you answered a little bit of just about VCs and raising money. So you help a lot of these startups go and raise money. You introduce them to investors and venture capitalists. What do they need to do to raise that capital? What are investors looking for? What's the key thing these guys are going to raise because it's ticking some boxes?
The harshest lesson is you most likely get investment when you don't actually need it. That's the worst thing about the whole thing. It's like if you're not thinking, do you know what, maybe I should just get a loan out of the bank or mortgage my house, you're probably not business is probably not good enough. Most people are like, I'm sort of okay, and I'd like someone to take a really, really big risk on me. And some angels do that because they back the person and it's smaller amounts of money. But most people just aren't business ready. Australia has, I would say, probably 100 times the amount of capital that all the startups need. But it's just not high risk capital. It's not stupid capital that goes, yeah, an app, and it's a discovery app about cafe discount deals, no problems. Here's 300 grand at a $10 million valuation. It's just, we just don't have that kind of risk capital that you have in the valley. So being investor ready, like you as a company, like a strong team, and also knowing that, like, I've never made an investment in a company which was sitting there begging me for the money. It was basically like, yeah, Mick, we're doing this, and sorry, you can't invest. I'm like, oh, come on, give me a chance, please. So that attitude of investment is also really important. Cultivating relationships. We also don't have, one of the big conflicts we have is if you're going to get serious capital from Australia, you have to have the maths that proves you're going to be global. And that probably means you've got global success already. So then you'd raise money in the markets you're already in. So why are you back in Australia? Like there's Blackbird, which sort of does syndicate capital with other people around the world or very early stage, but there's some real contradictions to that. It's like, if you purely own the Australian market, the maths rarely works. So how can you be a $100 million, billion-dollar company only servicing Australia? Or we might go global one day. Awesome, go global and I'll invest. Go global, I'm not relevant anymore. It's just, there's this horrible conundrums with Australian venture capital, which makes it really, really hard. That being said, there's more good VC capital in Australia than ever before, in terms of Blackbird and SquarePeg and others, but it's limited, and we also don't have enough good people who've done laps who can mentor back into it and can help the entrepreneurs go the distance. One of the first things I say to young entrepreneurs is think about the 5 biggest challenges you face in your business over the next 5 years. Find someone who's done those things and give them 1% of your company. Being able to call someone who's done the hard things you're going to face can be life-saving. Like, it's rare that someone works out by themselves independently how to solve these big problems. Someone's done it before, someone's worked it out. Just find them and call them.
Yeah, cool. Now, before we sort of switch over to the questions from the audience, if you don't know, Mick's actually moving to the United States. Next Thursday? This time next week, we'll be on a plane. So he's going to be Muru-D's eyes, ears, arms, and legs over there.
Well, so one of the things I didn't accept the job at Muru-D until they agreed that 1/3 of my whole mandate was for the ecosystem itself. So 1/3 of my whole job is doing stuff like this, mentoring other programs, helping other entrepreneurs. So I will be looking after the Muru-D stuff, but also want to try to do a bit more with the landing pad stuff over there and help all Australian companies not just get to the US but other bigger markets, because I'm a big believer in that.
So just as you mentioned the ecosystem here, so what's going right here and what's going wrong here?
I think tech startups, really, not tech businesses, is a bit too popular. It's good to have a bit of attention on it, but it feels a bit like it's faddish to be, I want to start a startup, and that's cheapened it a little bit. Not to say I don't want lots and lots of good people to be coming and trialling this, and I certainly have gone through my raft of screw-ups and mistakes, and that's sort of that's part of the journey. But it feels like that's attracted some groupies and bad juju around it. So I think the other thing we face in Australia, because we're a small population, is we have this split between local and national stuff. So you have sort of federal politics who've got lots of money, and cities which have all the activity but no money and no organisation, and so we just get if you took all the Australian ecosystem and put it into one town, if we all moved to Wagga, then we'd be in the top 10. But we're a little bit in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane. We're split everywhere, and that spread makes life really, really hard. So I think there are good things happening to improve the concentration of that. Because entrepreneurial ecosystems go in generational waves, right? So when everyone here turns their tech company into a success, spends 6 months on a beach in Croatia, gets a big board, and comes back and reinvests your time and money and experience into startups, then another 100 startups get support and benefit. But the reality is, like, Mike and Scott are still running Atlassian. We have less than 30 full-time. So we have less than 30 successful entrepreneurs who are now full-time investing their wisdom and experience in the ecosystem. Less than 30. Across Australia, I think. There may be some more, but I doubt it's more than 50. And it's like, they are a big multiplier to it. So everyone's be patiently, as I said, but hurry up and be a success. Go sit on the beach and come back and reinvest time and money.
So we'll just switch over to questions from the audience now. So the first one is, why no sex? It's good for stress. Thanks for the question, Cheryl. That's great. We'll take that as a comment if you like, and we can move on. Just talk about why you're moving to the USA.
Yeah, and partly it's timing for me. So I've been helping companies move to around the world for years. It's always been somebody else who's done it, and I've stayed at home, which I've loved, but I want to go and immerse myself. The other thing is, I think I've got a little bit blunt running accelerator program, because across Muru-D, Startmate and Pollenizer, I'm helping so many companies. I've become a boring ass generalist, right? So, and I've been trying to help companies here go global, and when you go to the Valley, there's 99% of people have assumed knowledge of like this, right? They just, the whole Valley, you walk out you can get every Uber driver's got a start to pitch, and you walk in the streets. It's just harder. It's like, so you know, I've been sort of playing in the NBL, and I want to go and spend a bit of time in the NBA. And it's also just good timing in terms of Muru-D. We've just hit 41 companies in the portfolio, so they need to be looked after. I've been complaining about us not being global, so I'm going to go global and set up those networks. Federal government's getting behind with these landing pads. I want to support that. My kids are 2, 4, and 6, so it's a good timing to go with that. And I convinced my wife somehow.
Nice.
I know.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the landing pads are a great move. Obviously, a bit later than what New Zealand's had one there for 4 years, I'm pretty sure. I suppose Startup House was kind of an unofficial Aussie landing pad over there. Almost a bit too much so, but where what you needed really was a nice landing pad, but then you want the Aussies to go out and mix. You know? My feedback from some of the American guys was that the Aussies need to get out and mix more and stop hanging with each other and really integrate a lot more. So, next question: build local, go global. Going global is tough. Why not build local, test local until it sees? Sorry, test local, so global until global sees a track record.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. So a good case study is a company just went through Muru-D called Abyss. They do underwater inspections of dams and waterways with autonomous robots, and they tested in Sydney Water, and they did this little waterway, and Sydney Water loved it so much they signed up for another project, and they're like, great, and then they got introduced to Bathurst Council, who wanted to do a project on where they wanted the waterways, and they were like, that's great, we should go to Bathurst. And I said, but you've got this lead in San Diego. They're like, so this goes to the priorities, right, and what your vision is. They were like, we've got a bird in our hand in terms of Bathurst, or we could possibly go to San Diego and maybe get a client. And it seems like that, certainly the low risk option is to go to Bathurst. But they are an underwater drone business that has machine learning and has significant costs involved, and they're not the only ones who've thought of this idea. Like roughly, if you've thought of it, there's 1,000 people in the world who've thought about it, and probably 100 people doing something about it, 10 who are better than you. So don't hiding your idea and not sharing it, it's never going to win. So they faced this big conundrum, which was, bird in hand versus flying overseas. But their business requires them to raise significant capital, and there's just no way they raise enough money at a good price with Bathurst as a proof point. It's like their total market proof then is Australia. It's like, yeah, maybe one day you get Newcastle and Albury-Wodonga and the rest of it, but there is like Australia is 0.3% of the global market in dams. Like there's one city in China, not even the whole province, which has like 900 dams, and San Diego Water has like a $38 million budget for a dam inspection each year, and it's like getting some validation in the local, so testing really close, but the guts at that point to say no to going further, picking it all up, and then then getting full product market validation in a big market, because it's not going to be exactly the same. But getting Bathurst Council to love your product was never going to be the same as San Diego. It's slightly different systems, slightly different billing methods, requirements. But if they prove in San Diego that it works, they can not super easily, but they've got at least some proof that they go to the rest of the USA. 324 million people. If they get some proof in Bathurst, you get the rest of Australia. So what? At best, that they are a $20 million business. They go and get San Diego, they're a potential $500 million company. So it's possible, but it's surprising how you look. I work for a company called Telstra, right? Decades of baggage and infrastructure, and hard to move quickly. The amount of companies I've seen that are 6 months old, and they've got one company paying them not very much money, and they still are beholden to that company. Like they already have a legacy that they're not prepared to give up to go and do something they should go and do. So it's tough, there's no right answer. You can't look in hindsight. There's no maths to be like it'll absolutely work. But I know they need to raise 5 million at 20, and they will not do that with proof of Bathurst, but they will do it with San Diego. So no great answers, but we just want. So New Zealand has more global companies because they're not like, oh, why don't we just get the New Zealand market all wrapped up and then we'll go around the world. It's like they're like, boom, they're on a plane straight away. Israel's done the same thing, not exactly friendly with their region, so that they get on a plane to big markets. So.
Cool. Next question. So how do you sustain a positive attitude to continue to create your own luck, especially through the tough times?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, irrepressibly extroverted and excited. But it's hard, like it is emotionally draining, and like you do. I remember one day driving to work, seriously no joke, playing Eye of the Tiger and like hitting the steering wheel and pumping a fist, and like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, like head in hands going, it's over, it's all over on the same day. Well, it's one of the reasons I love having a co-founder, is because, you know, they hold you accountable when you think that you're the bee's knees and you know, everything's great, and they're like, get back to work. And also when you're like, it's all over, they're like, get back to work, it's going to be fine. So having a co-founder, it's a tough relationship balance, we've talked about before, undying love, but complete and utter brutal, hurtful, painful honesty. That's a tough marriage there.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Starbucks ad with Eye of the Tiger playing? Where the guy is going to work and he gets a Starbucks and Survivor, the band, following around, and they're Roy.
No, I feel that.
Google it. It's on YouTube. It's quite funny. But yeah, just what the site is. What has been your biggest challenge working with corporates and showing them how to innovate? You know, because they want to do it. They think it's all sexy, and I come to your meetings and turn up to your demo days and innovation. We're there. What's the biggest challenges with these corporates?
So many. The impatience for action and patience for results is just hard to do. Like you read Innovator's Dilemma, it just completely says it all there. It's like everything needs to be shown on a spreadsheet that it works, and no startup is logical or mathematical, like makes any mathematical sense whatsoever. Some great definitions of entrepreneurship is pursuing opportunities outside your current level of resources. So you're basically saying, I'm starting a project that I can't actually finish yet. I'll acquire the resources as I go. You try to say it to a corporate, it's like, so what's your plan? Well, here's the first 3 months, and then we'll work it out from there. And they're like, sorry? You know, like, it just doesn't make any sense. Or you go for a corporate, you're like, yeah, how's the last 9 months going? Awesome. We've done 3 variations, and they all completely and utterly failed. This is why we added the word flirting to our vernacular. It's like, if you finish the 9 months and you actually learn and write them down and actually put them in a big fat binder with big font size, it looks like they've invested in something. Now, for the entrepreneur that's into their brain of all the things that didn't work, was the Edison one of like, I found 43 different ways that 40 different things that don't conduct electricity. This is what entrepreneurs, they know in their heads, like, oh, now I know it doesn't work, I've excluded those, I'll keep going and eventually I'll find the one that does. You try to say it to a corporate again, that's really, really hard to do. So I think the best way, Pollenizer does this with corporates now, it's like different building, different brand, different incentives, skin in the game. Because that's the other thing, skin in the game, right? It's like, so I would like to pay you a really lot of money, and if it fails, I'll keep paying you. No problems, I'll try quite hard to do that. Whereas I know, like with WooBoard, it was like, we had 6 weeks worth of money left, and I went to Melbourne, and I was like, if I get on the plane without capital, the business is dead. And I was like, I did like 9 meetings in a day, and I came back with 400 grand. It was just like, and you don't do that if you would quite like to succeed. You're like, you just want to tear someone's head off. Like, you know, Dean flew to Switzerland, had a 45-minute meeting, and he was like, I've got 45 minutes with this investor, and, you know, came back with a 250k check. It's like, you don't do that. You're like, I'm going business class, and well, might as well stay the weekend. You're like, fine, I'm getting back to, like, there's something significantly unreasonable about making it work so much. And that in a corporate environment, it is really hard to replicate. It's like, so all those things come on. Almost everything about a startup is the antithesis of a corporate. It's fast, it's safe, it's risky, like all those things. So no wonder it's hard.
That's why the incumbents can be disrupted, right? Because they can't move that fast.
Absolutely.
So.
And look, Uber, not even disrupting their incumbents, and they're being disrupted, right? So.
Last 2 questions. I really appreciate the energy you put in tonight, and how tired you are. What are the top 3 skills that a founder can learn to increase their chance of success? So what you talk about sometimes is that gut and grit, and that's kind of some of that's inbuilt. But what are the skills you can learn to increase your chance of success as a founder?
I think they're all learnable. Like not to discredit the Central Coast, but I grew up on the Central Coast, completely average guy, not particularly intelligent or creative. It's just like pure dumb persistence, probably because of being unreasonable most of the time. I think it's all learnable, but the persistence is probably the harder one. The things that I think are really learnable are discipline to prioritise and saying no to a lot of stuff. It's knowing what to say no to is really hard. Saying yes to everything is definitely going to fail. So you'd rather have the wrong focus than the right breadth. So that can be learned. Most of the time I know, so we run Muru-D and we know absolutely we have to say things at least 3 times because the context by which you say them is different. Sorry, the context by which they hear them is different every time. So when I did my focus talk in the first week, everyone's like, I can see how that applies to other people. and then I do it again in week 10 and they're like, that's exactly what I've been doing wrong. And it's really hard to do that. So the main thing is actually trying activities, like trying behaviours. I mentioned to one of the people here in the room, Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock for 10 minutes, write down 3 things you learned this week. You know, just put in your diary, write it down, email your team, email your 2 co-founders. Here's 3 things I learned this week. And then you've got 3 things you learned. You do that for 10 weeks, you've got 30 things you learned. 2 co-founders, that's 60 things you've learned. You're like, that's an activity you can do. And even if you think that sounds really stupid, trust a guy's been doing it for 20 years, try it, and I guarantee you in 3 months' time you'll be like, even if it all's completely failed, you can look back through that list and go, I've learned a whole lot here, I'm going to go again because I've learned a lot. So that can definitely be learned. Building relationships with people and getting them excited about it, I think is one that can be learned. But we underestimate that. You're constantly hiring. You're hiring yourself, you're hiring your team, you're hiring your spouse, investors, media. You're constantly pitching the vision and remaining focused. So the other thing they say is an astronomer and a microbiologist. Like you're 1% astronomer, you're like, here's where we're going, and now back to the incredible boring ass detail and they're working every day. So those disciplines can be learned.
And last question. So entrepreneurship is obviously runs pretty freely in your veins, and I know as well that once it's in, it never comes out. So would you ever start anything again? And if you did start something, what would you start?
Yeah, there's 2 really, really big problems that I'd like to commit myself to. And one is, so I've helped 6 of my friends through divorce. And I always thought, I feel like I'm a good husband, I invest time in it, partly because I've seen what's happened to my friends. But I think there's a big problem to solve about coaching relationships and building. You know, I've spent more time in soccer training and basketball training in my life than I have actually in relationship training. And why is that? What if we could reduce the impact on kids and happy people around the world if we could halve the divorce rates? So that's a big problem I'd love to solve one day. Cool. The other one is this tiny little thing that people might have heard about called climate change. So I think there's actually no accelerator in the world at the moment focused on climate change. And that's you know, we're going to be mortified. Our kids are going to like look at us and be like, what the hell were you doing? And we can probably blame our parents a lot. Or people my age.
We do have a mining tech accelerator in Australia.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? More mining. Play to our strengths. So they're 2 things that I'm, one thing I do know now is to commit anything new is massive. And you'll find second-time entrepreneurs will dabble for ages because they know that it's probably going to be 10 years of their life. Whereas in my 20s, I was like, what's that idea? Sounds great, let's do it. You know, like, it takes about 12 seconds to convince me, but now I'm like, I'm going to do 10 years on this. Yeah. I want to know what to do.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Mick, thank you so much for all your work you put into the Australian ecosystem. It wouldn't be the same without you. I wish you the best of luck in the United States. And please join me in thanking Mick Liubinskas. Please hang around. I hope there's still some drinks left. There's not, I'll find some. I don't think there's much food left. But look, say hi, introduce yourself to someone, and I'll come and say hi as well. Thanks very much.
Sorry to say, everybody, that I've actually got another event I'm going to. So you can email me at mick@liubinskas.com, mick@pollenizer.com, mick@muru-D.com. Email me, and if I can help you, I will.